Hey guys, we are back. We are in the editor now, and I wanted to go ahead and kind of show you with code what we were illustrating earlier with our container example. Um, so let's start off with the var keyword. When we use the var keyword in JavaScript, we basically are asking for trouble. Really, when this whole lesson's over with, if there's anything that you take away from this, is that just don't use var anymore. It causes bugs in your code, just causes a lot of unpredictable code things that you wouldn't expect to happen. And that's not what we want. We want our code to be predictable. We want to be able to understand our code and know what's going on with it later on when we come back. So, but the thing is that we still need to know what var is doing because we're going to see it in a lot of legacy code. You're going to have to work with it. It's still going to be out there for a good while. It's slowly getting better and better, but you're still going to see it. So just so we know what's going on, let's go ahead and use the var keyword to create a variable, and we'll call that person, and the value will be JSON. If we console.log person now, we're going to get JSON as our value. That makes sense, right? Here's the thing. If we create a function and we call that test, and let's say in there we create a for loop that sets var I equal to 0, and if I is less than 3, then keep increasing it, right? And in there, inside of that for loop, we console.log I. What do we expect to see? Well, we're probably going to see 0, 1, and 2 because those are less than 3. So we run it. And actually, we have to actually run our code. To do that, let's invoke the function test and run it. And we get 0, 1, 2. Perfect. All right, that's predictable. That's good. So we understand that. We were missing a semicolon, but all right. So let's go ahead and change this or add on to this and say console.log I. What do we expect to see? Well, we know we're going to get 0, 1, 2 here, but what are we going to get here? Let's run it. Well, again, let's do an invocation of test, and we get 0, 1, 2, and then we get 3 because at this point, I is 3. Okay, because there's 3 numbers there. So I is 3, but that's not what we want. And imagine we were 1,000 lines down in our code here, and we didn't know that the var keyword was used up here to create a variable I and set it equal to 3. We don't know that 1,000 lines down, and that's where it can become an issue. That's where it becomes a problem that we don't want in our code. So a great and easy way to fix that would be to just change your var to let. And if you change your var to let, what happens is we're no longer function scoped. With var, change it back to var, we're function scoped, which means we're anywhere inside of these curly braces, anywhere inside of the test function, var knows that I is equal to whatever it was inside this loop, right? It knows that. So if you're outside of this function, it's not going to know that anymore, right? So it's function scoped. The thing is we don't want it to be function scoped. We want it to be block scoped. So if it's block scoped, we use let or const. And inside of these curly braces, let I lives, right? It lives only within these curly braces. And that's very helpful because it makes our code more predictable. So if we were to run this, what do we expect to happen? Well, the interpreter is going to come through. It's going to run the for loop. It's going to set I equal to 0, 1, 2. And then it's going to console.log here. And what do we expect console.log I to be at this point in the code? Let's run it and find out. 0, 1, 2, and I is not defined. So that's because we've met the end of this block statement, right? The end of this for loop. And now that we're out of that block, console.log I means nothing. It's undefined here. It's not defined. It doesn't know what I is at this point, right? So that's what's really good about using let and const inside of our code because it makes it more predictable. There's other issues with var as far as hoisting and things like that, but we won't go into that in this video. If you want to dig into that, go ahead. That's what I like to hear. Go in there and start learning on your own. But we will make a video on that soon about hoisting, and hopefully that'll clear things up. So let's go a little further and create a variable with const. All right, so we're going to create an array, maybe called data, and in there we will have, let's say the numbers 1, 3, 6, and 9. All right, so we have an array. If I wanted to console.log that array, then I'm going to get 1, 3, 6, and 9. Here's the issue with const. We want to use const all the time. That's like basically what we want to use every single day, right? Unless we know that we have something that we want to change, like a variable that just constantly needs to be continually changed, right? Some incoming data that needs to be changed all the time. We use let, so because we know let can be manipulated and changed at any point we want. So when we use const, we're saying we don't ever want this to change. But that's not exactly true, because we can go ahead and manipulate this by adding on to it. So let's use the data and let's push another number, let's say 10, to our array. So now we're going to get 1, 3, 6, 9, and 10 because const will let you do that. Sorry, data. So now when we run this, we're going to get 1, 3, 6, 9, and 10. So we can actually add on to our variable even when it's defined with const, but we can't completely overwrite it. So down here, I'll say const data is now equal to, you got overridden, right? It's not going to let us do this. I know it's not. So you guys can go ahead and quit the video. All right. So if we run this, duplicate declaration data, boom, not going to happen. All right. It's not going to happen. So use const if you don't want to be able to change your variables value, right? Or you want to be secure that later on when I'm 1,000 lines down in my code and it's been 2 or 3 weeks and I have no idea what was up above and I don't want to read through every single line. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to create another variable. Maybe I'll call it data. Oh, and it's going to say, no, you won't, sir. I'm already created, right? And it's just a joke, but yeah. So use const if you don't want your data to be changed, or you want it to be predictable, and you can kind of just see, hey, there's only been one instance where I've used data as a variable, and I want to add on to it. All right. So and use let if you want to be able to constantly change your data, right? So let data equal 1, 3, 6, and 9, and then console.log what data is, and you're going to get 1, 3, 6, 9. But it works similar to const, where if you've used it before and you're in the same scope, you're in the same global scope here, then it's not going to let you reassign it to a completely different value. You're going to get duplicate declaration data. But if you were to be inside of a function and let's say test again, and you wanted to or you wanted to say let data equal Martha, right? It's a weird name. No offense to any Marthas out there. But if you wanted to console.log what data is there, and we invoke test, then you're going to see that 1, 3, 6, and 9 was the data up here. But down here inside of test, with the same variable name using the let keyword, it can be completely different data because we're inside of another scope. We're inside of the function scope of test, right? This is on the global scope. And talking about scope, let's jump over to the browser really quick. I wanted you guys to see this. I think it's very important to see. If you're working with a code base and you're creating global variables with the var keyword, let's say we're using the color red. Yeah, sure. And we can open up the window object, which is, part of every single browser window that you're ever going to work with. You'll see that it's just full of properties and values, right? But guess what it's also full of now? Now that we created this var color, right here, we use the keyword var in it, we've actually attached our property unknowingly to the window object. And that can cause issues because later on we use third-party, we use another library or something like that, and we could actually overwrite our keywords or the variables that we create using var. So it's an issue. There's also an issue with hoisting. I think I mentioned that earlier. We will get into that, but yeah. And another thing is if we use let here and we say color 2 is blue, you try to run that again and look in the window object, you're not going to find it because we're block scoped, right? Well, it's not just because we're block scoped, but let just will not attach to the window object, right? And neither will const. Set that to green. And sorry, what did I do wrong here? I've already used it before. Yeah, I already used it earlier. So if I see how it wouldn't let me do it, that's exactly what we want to see. It's predictable. We understood right away. Oh, we've used it. Okay, so let's say violet. And if I look at window here, then we go down inside of this object and look for color 5. And we only see our first one, which was declared with var. So that's another issue that you can keep in mind when you're working with older code bases and you're wondering why your code might be not working the way that you expect it to work. All right, and yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Next time we're going to be talking about hoisting, so have fun. Keep coding. Bye, guys.